Okay, so
Mm.
hi. Hi,
Hi.
how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yourself?
I'm doing good too. So, would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Sure. My name is Yi-bing, and I am a product manager at Netflix.
Okay, so before we talk about your current role, could you tell me a little bit about your education and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So I did computer science for undergrad from University of California, and
Mhm.
then I then went to master's degree at Stanford, and I got a management science and engineering degree, and that's how I was able to get into a product management kind of leadership development program that allow you to try out the product management role. And from there, then I was just able to get into, after the rotational program, the 2 year rotational program, I was able to get into like a regular product manager role. And that's where I stay ever since.
Yeah, okay. So, what is product management like, and what exactly do you do on a day-to-day basis? Yeah.
Good question. Product management is, I think of it as like all of these, web product or applications we use, any of these software products we use, Facebook, Netflix, right? Uh, the product, you're using it, and it's hopefully it's easy to use, but somebody had to conceive of how that looked like. And so while the engineers are the ones that actually does the programming and coding and implements it, the idea of that product, of how what each page look like, what the home page look like, what happens when you click on this button and that button, all of that interaction, that all of that is conceived by the product manager, who will also definitely have a designer to help them flesh out the details, but what type of features and the general usage, the vision of the product is definitely the responsibility of the product manager. So on the day, so with that big goal in mind, the
Mhm.
day-to-day basis is very different. It depends on the life cycle of a product, whether it's at the very beginning, you just have an idea and you're trying to figure out what that should really looks like, to talking to the users to understand what really are the pain points, to flesh out the more detail needs, use cases, to all the way to like writing specific specs for the engineers to develop, all the way to engineers coding, and you're kind of uh, on you're kind of like on standby to answer any of the questions, to testing the product, to launching it, to supporting after launch. It all varies on what point. And so that's why I love the job of product manager. It's very dynamic, and yeah, and you get to create something that you can call as your baby. So I think of it as like the architect, of the equivalence of architect, who is creating a blueprint for what the building should look like, but they're not actually the one that's building, right?
Yeah.
The building, but they create a blueprint. So product manager is the same way, except it's for like software product or applications. Yeah.
So, could you talk about projects that you worked on recently, or like not recently in the past, and like how you, like what you did about for it and how it went?
Yeah. So I really loved one. I love a lot of projects I did, but one that I created is 0 to 1, meaning like from
Hmm.
a complete brand, a new from a new completely from the beginning, versus kind of a mature product where you're like adding small incremental feature, is a iPad app I built, where it allows uh, people to buy and sell their real estate properties online. So essentially it's like an eBay, but just for real estates. And you probably heard of kind of like Zillow and Redfin are starting to do that, right? So this was
Yeah.
many years ago, and this company already started doing that. And it was a really fun project, because you get to build a iPad app, and then you have to figure out the challenge of how do you allow users to complete these like complicated transactions, buy and sell uh, um, transactions that are kind of complicated, and people need to really trust the system. Um, and like fit that into like a small iPad versus a website, which you have a lot more real estate, online
Yeah.
real estate, to figure out how to put all the functionality, cram it in there. So definitely very challenging, but very rewarding because it was 0 to 1. And yeah, we just worked out like what the V1 looks like, the initial version looks like, what is good enough so that we can launch quickly to the world, and then what's, we can defer to V2 while we get user feedback so that you're not waiting for months before you can launch it. So I think it took pretty quickly, like the first version was 3 months, and then we just got really good user feedback and just continue to iterate on that and add more robust features.
Well, so that was a 0 to 1 product, and at Netflix, your product is already there, so it would be less 0 to 1, more like improving that.
Exactly.
How is that like different in terms of what you have to do?
Yeah. So I'm at a little bit new at Netflix, but I can
Mhm.
still talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the at Netflix, more incremental thing is, yeah, we have an internal. So I'm on the not the consumer side. So not, if you're the Netflix user and you're seeing all the interface on your TV, that's not what I do. I actually support our internal users. So I build internal tools for Netflix users, such as Netflix lawyers, to
Oh.
figure out how can they negotiate more efficiently, more quickly, with all of the talents that we have. So they need kind of like a CRM tool, or like a Salesforce for the lawyers. Yeah, so that's like the background, and we already have such a tool. So just imagine we already have like a Salesforce, internal Salesforce for Netflix, but of course, like it can always get better. So
Yeah.
incremental improvements we want to make is, can we build can we expand this additional feature, internal tool, to allow the Netflix lawyers to like capture more granular um, contract details when they're negotiating contract with the talent. For just as an example, it's not like this is already a feature that's built, but just as an example to easy to understand is, for example, you can imagine the V1 of the CRM tool is such that the lawyers can record a contract that was for like, hey, the actor, or the
Mhm.
contract is for the producer, a contract for the writer. So these are independent, 3 different types, right? But you can imagine sometimes the director is also the writer, or the
Mhm.
director is also the actor. But the CRM V1 tool does not have one where you allow them to tag it as a hybrid. And so
Mhm.
a person who's the actor and the director, we have to create 2 different deals, which is redundant. And so an improvement would be to create a new type that's a hybrid that allows you to capture this contract and tag it as both an actor and a director. Yeah, so things like that to make the system work more efficiently for the lawyer versus causing the lawyer to type up 2 contract and giving them more work to do.
So how do you decide like what problem to work on when? Do you have a data analyst, or do you just like see what comes up and solve
Yeah,
it?
that's a good question. So it definitely depends on what type of product you're working on. So when I previously worked on Uber Eats team, that was a consumer facing role. So I was actively building products and new products and feature enhancements for the Uber Eats delivery folks. And so with that, right, we have millions of people across the world to deliver. And so you have enough volume of people to run A/B tests to get data, just like Facebook does, and then figure out like, okay, where do we, based on the analytics, where we think they're dropping off in the funnel. And so this is like the area of problem we're going to focus on. But on the other hand, with my current role, we're supporting internal users of like maybe a couple hundred. You're not going to like get that kind of analytics to inform. So this kind of role is more qualitative. You just need to talk to users, understand their overall business workflow, what their biggest pain points are, and go from there. So it's quantitative versus more qualitative, yeah, approach.
Yeah. Okay, so what is your favorite thing about working in tech? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think like tech is so pervasive in our lives
Mhm.
that it's just so relevant. You cannot avoid it. And so I think it's so cool to be able to design and work with tools, technology, products that so many people use, right? So that's just cool. That's the future. It is what it is now, and then it's going to continue to be bigger and bigger. So I think it's just a huge part of influencing everyone's lives that it just feels
Yeah.
very meaningful. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then that's one thing. And then two is, I think like earlier in my career, I had the option to go into like kind of Wall Street like finance side of things, versus like product management. And my rationale was, hey, product management, you get to build something new, you get to add new value to the world,
Yeah.
versus like finance world. I feel like it's important, but you're kind of trading value, versus here you're adding net new value. And so that's why I decided to go into product management, and I think the theory has proven out to be true. Yeah.
Okay, so I have one last question. There's a lot of high
Yeah,
school
yeah,
students like me that are interested in getting into tech but don't know where to start. So do you have any
yeah.
advice for them?
Are you asking more about like product management tech
Well,
or
yeah,
engineering?
sure. We can
Oh,
do product
okay, yeah.
management.
Yeah, because I think engineering is much easier. There's so many engineering roles from like
Yeah.
entry level. Yeah. So product management is a little harder. Definitely back then, when I graduated, there were very few companies that offer a product manager role. And then even then, it's more of like you got to get into one of these
Hmm.
rotational product management role, like Intuit offer when I
Yeah.
joined, or Google, right? Google offer. And so it is hard. Now there are a lot more decent rotational programs, but even then it's really hard to get in. I think, yeah, one is if you get into one of these rotational programs that they'll just take, college grads, that's great. Like kind of like these rotational programs. Two is if you can't do it, then like, um, outside of rotational programs, see if there's any company that just have a regular product manager junior role that takes you. If you still can't get it, I always advise my friends to like, hey, get into a great company first. Like maybe it's data analytics role, or maybe it's engineer, because a lot of engineers will become product managers later. So do your engineering do for like a year or two, and then move laterally into product management, because then that way you have the domain expertise of the area that you are working on as an engineer. And then once you have trust and people know you do a good job of it, it's much more easier to then within that company switch laterally to the product manager of that product that you were just building for. Look for opportunity, talk to your manager, let them know, hey, I want to be a good, do good engineering work for now, but I have an interest like down the road to be a PM, and so that your manager can look out for you. Hopefully you have a good manager. And a lot of companies here they want to, if they know you are a smart, hardworking, talented person, they want to retain you. It doesn't matter if you want to switch to a different role, they want to retain you as a company. So yeah, I think those are like the sequence you should look for. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. I think that's it for today. It was really
Great.
great talking to you. Thank you.
It was
Um,
good to chat too. Hopefully
yeah,
this
I
is helpful.
appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, I'll send you the final video, and yeah, I think that's it. So bye.
Yay.
I'll end the
Good luck.
recording. Thank you.